Сайн байцгаана уу хүн төлөвчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай де факто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор энэ Аз Номхон далайн нягтлан бодогчдын холбоо гэж байна. Тэр холбооны гүйцэтгэх захирал ноён Брайн, Блад гэж хүн оролцож байна.
Брайн, Блад. Аз Номхон далайн нягтлан бодогчдын холбооны гүйцэтгэх захирал. Их Британи Австралид 27 жил дэлхийн 4 том гэгддэг аудит нягтлан бодох бүртгэлийн фирмүүдэд за түүний дотор 16 жил нь партнераар ажиллаж байсан. Тэрээр Английн Лондон хотод артур андарсан фирмд ажлын гараагаа эхлүүлж 1985 онд Австралийн Сиднейр үргэлжилж дараа нь Эрнст Янгд нэгдсэн. Аудитын партнерын хувьд тэрээр олон том үндэстэн дамсан корпорациудтай хамтран ажиллаж байсан. За тэрээр одоогоор төлөвлөлт, байгаль орчин, тээвэр, эрүүл мэнд, онцгой байдлын салбар дахь Австралийн төрийн аудит, эрсдлийн хэд хэдэн хоруудад хараат ус гишүүн болон дараагаар ажиллаж байна.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you are here in Mongolia with accountants of Mongolian accountants. Tell us about the Confederation, please.
Yes. And in fact, this is my third visit to Mongolia now.
Oh, is it?
Having visited the Mongolian Institute of CPAs on two previous occasions, 2011 and 2016. The Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants has a long history, actually commenced in 1957 in the Philippines. And it's an organisation that brings together accountancy institutes, organisations. We call them professional accountancy organisations from all across Asia and the Pacific. Obviously, back in 1957, if you wanted to know what was happening in the accountancy profession in other countries, you had to get onto a plane and go and have conferences. So that's what was held in 1957, a conference in the Philippines. 3 years later in Australia. That conference has been held every 4 years since. And along the way, the organisation's gone on to do more things. It's a small organisation, but it has 30 member bodies across 25 countries. And the institutes, if you add up all of the qualified accountants that are members of those institutes, it adds up to 2 million qualified accountants. And compared to the global number's 3 million. So within our organisation, we have 2/3. It's because we have some affiliate members in the UK as well, United Kingdom.
And Mongolia is member.
And Mongolia is a member. So Mongolia became a member in 2000. It was not until 2011 that I came here. I think some of my predecessors may have been here before that. But in 2011 we came, and I brought some people with me from the International Federation of Accountants, which is the head global body for the accountancy profession. And within 12 months of that visit, MNICPA, the Mongolian Institute, MNICPA became a member of the international body. And that was very important for MNICPA. It clearly gives a lot of credibility to their role. So that was our first success here, and I've enjoyed coming ever since, because every time I seem to be with MNICPA, they're very keen to listen, very keen to learn, and they then get on and do things afterwards.
in this accountant, you said professional accountants are not only working in private sector, but also government sector, right?
Yes.
And you mostly nowadays you're working with the government part of it.
On this particular visit, yeah. The two previous visits, our focus was elsewhere, with Manikpa. On both occasions, just to help them continue to strengthen and develop as a professional accountancy organisation. But on this occasion, I've come with what I call my public sector financial management committee, which is a group that looks into all matters associated with the public sector from the perspective of the accountancy profession. So it's on this visit that we're focusing on the public sector.
So you in Australia, how does the system work? Is it, you said, public sector accountants system? How this public sector accountants are getting together and discuss the issues, or what is the structure there?
All the professional accountancy organisations are different.
Sure.
In Australia, they have members in the private sector, members in the public sector, and those qualified accountants are able to work across both sectors very easily. And we've probably reached a stage in our own country where the state of public sector financial management is very well advanced. And as an accountant, a financial chief financial officer, you can work in the private sector or the public sector very easily.
Yeah, but because the principle is the same.
Principles are largely the same.
You know, until 2000, until our changes in early 1990, we had a different financial system, accounting system accordingly. And we tried during about 10 years to shift to this international standard. And you have visited Mongolia since 2011, now 23. What kind of challenges we have? As you see.
From the accountancy profession point of view, there's a few elements that are important. You've got the accounting itself, you've got the financial reporting, and then you've got the auditing that takes place. Mongolia has been on a journey within the public sector to improve all of those aspects for a short while now, but there's still a lot more work to be done. So there are some particular aspects that I can talk to here.
For example.
So fundamental to good accounting and producing information upon which you can take good decisions is that you follow a system of accounting which we call the accrual basis of accounting, which means that you measure and value and record all of your assets and all of your liabilities. You're creating a balance sheet which fully represents the financial position of the organisation.
Historically too, from the beginning.
Yes, usually done on an annual basis within any organisation, and same within the public sector. So Mongolia's been on that journey to bring accrual accounting into the public sector, but it's not fully implemented yet. So that's one of the challenges and
you
issues
have been
here.
visiting several government institutions, like...
So we've met the National Audit Office, the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, and the Ministry of Finance. And just on that accrual accounting matter, I'll just come away from the Ministry of Finance now, and they were indicating that they would have a plan that all the government entities are on the full basis of accrual accounting by 2028, so about 5 years from now. These processes do take time. And indeed, relative to other countries, Mongolia is not that poorly placed. Australia, of course, is very advanced. They started this journey 30 years ago. But there are still many other countries that don't use the accrual accounting.
Mongolia has not yet having the, say, united or consolidated accounting system? The government, the public, because it consists of different institutions.
Yeah, there are systems in place, but bringing in what we call this accrual basis of accounting, which is quite different to cash. A cash basis of accounting, where you really, I'll give you an example of things you have to measure. So within the public sector, there could be, the employees may be entitled to a pension at the end of it. And you need to be able to value that pension liability. Now that's very complex to do. And depends. You would also have to accumulate a lot of information in order to do that calculation as well. So
you mean that the employee at the end of his career is entitled to pension?
Yes.
And that pension is somehow reflected in somewhere in the.
It should be
in the balance.
It should
in
be
where,
because
for
it's
example.
Yes, it would be a liability in the balance sheet.
Oh, and they
just same as if I owed you something because I've bought something from you.
Yeah, yet in Mongolia, our pension system is itself is a very strange system.
Yeah.
We call it even not pension, we call it pension, we call it even pension insurance, which completely confuses all this very goal of that fund.
Right. I can't comment on the detail of the Mongolian system, but what I can say, because pension schemes vary across most countries, it's just a very complex area to account for.
Here in Mongolia, when you say, my employees say I'm the accountant of the Ministry of Finance, for example, my 100 employees, one day will go to retire. And that retirement payment, why it should be in the balance of the Minister of Finance and is a liability?
Now.
They should be now.
It should be in there now because they've earned an entitlement towards that pension.
Then what happens if this man leaves the job?
Well, he might leave it to somewhere else, and therefore that liability would be picked up
to the other organizations.
Yeah.
Well, then it will take quite a long time for Mongolia to catch up in that system.
That's a complex area. And even in Australia, when we brought in the full accrual accounting system, that was one of the trickiest areas. It can be overcome, and professional accountants will have the skills in order to assist.
In countries like Australia or even Norway, the pension fund itself is one of the logically the largest fund in the country, right?
Yes.
Investment fund.
Yes.
So then what, the Minister of Finance liability, how does it will be connected with that?
Now the liability will sit in all of the organisations where the individuals work. So the liability sits in all of the departments where the individuals are.
So what does it mean? Like when a person is retired, the money we pay to the person or to the pension fund?
Well, the money's being paid normally, what I'm used to, money's being paid into pension funds. Yeah.
Of a country.
Yeah. But it could be pension funds of your choice as well. But very often
private
might get
pension.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And other areas could be asset valuations.
Okay.
Are also a tricky area. Can you measure all of the assets which a government? Can you identify all of the assets to start with, which a government owns? That can get very tricky, and becomes an ongoing issue. I worked with railways, for example.
Okay.
So government in Australia would own the railways, and you're trying to measure the value of a tunnel, for example. But it could be a tunnel that was built many, many years ago. So it cost a certain amount to build it then. But if you were to build it today, it would cost a lot more.
Yes.
And under accrual accounting systems and full valuation, you would measure it at today's value. So you'd need a lot of complex calculations
I wish Mongolian
to do that.
Mongolian railway, we have a railway, it is joint venture by two governments who are both known well for their not good management. It's Russia and Mongolia owns this Mongolian Ulaanbaatar Railway. And I wish we have exactly the current value of the asset. And there is such a huge asset valued with the price maybe 30 years back. As a result, this balance looks so bad and they cannot borrow proportionally.
Yes.
So that's the issue, right?
That's the type of issue you deal with. But if you can get to full accrual accounting, you know exactly the value of all of the assets that the government owns, and you know the full value of all of the liabilities which the government will have to fulfill in due course. Yep. And you obviously hope that the assets outweigh the liabilities.
The prices are changing every year.
Yes, and so
you account inflation, you account the selling price.
And so under the international accounting standards, many of those assets would be valued by professional valuers every 3 years or every 5 years. And indeed, every year you still have to make an assessment, especially to make sure that the value of them has not decreased in any way.
Yeah, because it's mostly real estate, factory, plant, whatever. The other thing here in Mongolia is because their value is so low, or they are not interested, even state-owned enterprise, they are not interested to have a new value because it will be increasing their balance substantially. And in some of them, they are not interested. Mm-hmm. So what is the best way? Who said that by 2028, which is 5 years from now, the Mongolian government will have consolidated Akkruel best balance sheet?
That's the aim, and that's to get to an international standard.
But
and once you get to that type of standard and the information's very reliable, it should work well for investors, and it should work well for foreign direct investment for the country, because you know what you're getting involved with. You're dealing with information produced on a globally consistent basis. So it's an important goal for most in the public sector to get to a full accrual accounting.
Necessary to have the real value of real assets.
Yes, it gives you much better information for decision making and what you do with those assets as well, and how you use those assets.
In business environment like in Mongolia, the inflation goes sometimes 14%. Yeah. Then definitely the valuation of real estate is to account that changes. Yeah. And if, say, you said every year you need to assess, right?
Particularly if it's falling in value, yes, you'd need to bring that to account.
Yeah, or the value of the state-owned enterprise asset may increase. Yeah. Then accordingly they will pay we call it amortization, depreciation per that year to be increased as well.
Correct.
And then if it's substantial change, that depreciation, which is not cash, but it's the balance sheet in cash flow statement, it is not cash, yet it is to be accounted. Then in America, for example, they have a two-accounting system. One is a business called managerial accounting system, and a financial accounting system.
Yes.
The same, I believe, in Australia.
Well, there are different types of accountants, but
which I find very natural, because you talk about the assets which is deteriorating, and in 10 years, if you made proper depreciation, you will be able to buy new assets with the depreciation,
exactly.
Right? So who is running their fund?
Exactly.
With the state-owned enterprises, how does it work?
The same way as with any other organisation, but that's what you've described is exactly what should be happening under an accrual accounting system.
Which is not here.
It's not, as I understand it, it's not fully implemented yet. It comes through in the income statement. It's a non-cash item, but it comes through in the income statement, so that you're getting a better reflection of whether that organisation is delivering a profit or delivering a loss in any 1 year. And then you can build up some retained earnings if you have the profit. You're building up retained earnings from which you can make further investments,
non-cash
or indeed take out debt
I see.
And to loan finance anything.
Non-cash income statement, right?
Yeah.
You say.
But my discussions with, the players here, whether it's Ministry of Finance and indeed some government officials, there's a very clear commitment to try to get to these good international standards. I didn't recognise any resistance in any way.
Thanks God.
I did indicate to the Ministry of Finance I might be back in 2028 to see how things have gone. But they're on a journey. These things are complex. All countries have gone through that. That are putting accrual accounting in are finding it takes time. It requires clearly good accountants to be involved. And another challenge here will be to ensure we have enough accountants to be able to do that work.
Let's see the state-owned enterprises, including public offices. They have buildings. Do they pay tax on the real estate in Australia? Minister of Foreign Affairs of Australia, do they pay tax on the building they own as a real estate?
Look, best of my knowledge in Australia, someone who works in the public sector, you just own your own homes and assets and you pay taxes same as everyone else. There's no real difference between someone who works in the public sector or works in the private sector.
Because in Mongolia, state-owned enterprises, real estates, government offices, real estates.
Okay.
They don't pay tax on the real estate.
Right.
Instead, the private sector is paying 2% or so every year. So it should be the same, right?
We have, to the best of my knowledge in Australia, we have what we call a tax equivalent regime.
Okay.
So in the public sector, you're not paying tax as such because you're operating within the public sector. But the accounting that takes place effectively records a tax amount as if it's equivalent to tax. And that's so that once again you're trying to get a real true reflection of that state-owned enterprise, as you call it, as if it was any other kind of business.
All right, so tax equivalent system, which meaning that they are registering it in auditing or in accounting as if they have paid tax.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The other thing, accounting, first accounting, then the financial report, the third is auditing. So one thing is to make international standard accounting.
Yes.
The other thing is international financial report, the system.
Yes.
So how do you see that in Mongolia?
Part of the journey still. Obviously, get the accounting right, and then the financial reporting should be good as well. Very important that the financial reports are what are produced on international financial reporting standards, which means the information which is disclosed is in accordance with those international standards. And if you don't disclose what's required in the standards, then the auditor should be qualifying those accounts and therefore bringing it to the attention of the reader.
So if our accounting system is not fully reflecting the reality as it is now, and they promise by 2028 everything will be okay, only after that this financial report will be the truth.
Well, you'll get a better amount of information.
Do we have it now?
And well, I don't know the answer to that because
you haven't seen that.
Well, and hard for me to read the Mongolian financial statements.
They should have
but the audit office have indicated to me in discussions with them that clearly we've not fully adopted all of the standards yet, and therefore it can give rise to some accounting adjustments, which the audit office would aim to identify and bring that forward in their reports for Parliament. But at the moment, when you're in a transition period, which really is where Mongolia is at now, it's not totally clear. that's why it's important to get to this end point.
You have met our national audit.
I've met the National Audit Office as well.
How do you find if there's any English information you could see?
I've just had discussions with them.
What are the challenges?
And to understand what they do. And I'm pleased to see that they're involved in all forms of audit. Financial audit, compliance audit, performance audit. And it would seem as if they have a good level of independence. It's important for a National Audit Office to be independent. There will be appointments, of course, by Parliament, and there will be approved budgets for them. But within the budget, it seems as if they can use that to do the audit work that they feel is necessary. And that's very important for a National Audit Office.
Sure that National Audit is truly independent. What is the key requirements for that National Audit to be truly independent from the government, from the every state?
Ideally, that the appointment or the sacking of an Auditor General should not be left, for example, with one person to be able to make that decision. It needs to be dealt with in an appropriate way. So very careful about the appointment process. An audit office would want to be properly funded to do their work. If there's any restrictions on the funds and they can't do their work,
have you identified any problems out of this speech by meeting you, the National Audit?
No, not. I think the problems just come back to capacity. The requirement for really well-trained, educated, qualified accountants, whether that's to do accounting or to do auditing.
Not both.
Well, dependent upon your personal skills, and you can move between jobs. I started my career as an auditor, and I continued to do that most of my career. But many of my colleagues left and became chief financial officers, so they were doing the accounting.
You have been working with all Big Fours.
I have. I started my career with what I think is a very famous Big Four firm at the time, Big Five, Arthur Andersen. And Arthur Andersen,
I remember the story.
Unfortunately disappeared in 2002.
Or taken by the others.
And as a result of that, yes, they went elsewhere. Personally, I went to Ernst & Young. So all of Australia went to Ernst & Young. Many countries in Asia actually went to Ernst & Young as well.
By the way, after Arthur Andersen, there was a huge conversation about having auditing and accounting in the same hand is not the best way. Remember?
Yes, but more, not so much the accounting and audit, yes, but also other services, particularly consulting work. Yeah. So the debate that goes on today around the large firms is more to do with, auditing and consulting. Because, if you want to deliver a truly independent opinion on a set of financial statements, it doesn't need to be based on whether you're earning fees from other types of services as well.
How do you see the accounting, may I say, sector or industry in Mongolia, where we need to pay attention? You say human resources or...
Human resources is probably the key. I was just doing there's no set formula, but you can do some crude calculations. If you look at some developed countries, let me take Australia as a key. If you look at the number of accountants that we have, qualified accountants, within Australia relative to our population, you start to come out with some ratios. Let's talk about it. I think in Australia we have something like one accountant for every 100 people that live there.
Because also your tax system is so well done. everybody is paying tax, unlike Mongolia. Right. And because our tax system, income tax, for example, works through employer, not directly from the customer, from the person.
Right.
What is the advantage of that? Because I see, for example, it's disadvantage for our democracy, even because the employee doesn't know exactly how much he's paying as a tax.
Certainly in Australia, we have paid by the organisations, paid by whoever you work for. Your employer is paying that tax.
In the US, you pay.
But you know exactly how much has been paid. And if circumstances change within any year, we as individuals also have to file our own tax returns each year. So at the end of each year, there's a true-up. So what you should have paid versus what has been paid on your behalf.
What I'm saying is, in Mongolia, if I employer, I not only pay my employees part of organization part of the tax, but also individual part of tax. Because in Mongolia, they are not report annually their income, employees.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why, and I thought it is more complicated. Probably with the time it will be changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with us. The employer is paying the tax. Because largely it does mean people cannot avoid paying the tax. If you leave it to an individual, there's a chance that tax could be avoided.
In Australia, you cannot avoid it.
So, no, we can't avoid it. And we don't want to avoid it.
Yeah, sure.
It's important that we do the right thing. And the accountancy profession is all about doing the right thing. So a strong focus on ethics. I actually was talking to someone from the tax office in Mongolia here today, and indicated to me that 70% of tax revenues in Mongolia actually come through a CPA. So a CPA has been involved somewhere along the way to deliver that tax through to the tax authorities, which, you know, I think it has to be a good thing. Accountants do get involved in tax compliance.
I hope it's a correct figure. Anyway, Brайн, this is a very interesting conversation, and you shared your knowledge to our audience about the importance of the auditing, accounting, and financial report, which had to be truth, which would be good base for, as you said, for foreign direct investment, not only foreign investment, but the domestic investments as well. So thank you very much for your job doing in Mongolia.
Thank you. And if I may say, it's why we're here to work with the Mongolian Institute of CPAs to make sure they're as strong as they can be. And I'm very impressed with that organisation. And I hope that all of the other institutes lend their support to them as well, because you need a few more accountants in Mongolia. And the Mongolian Institute can really help you get there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
За хүн үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Аз Номхон далайн нягтлан бодохын холбоо гэж байна. Тэрний гүйцэтгэх захирал ноён Брайн, Блад гэж хүн оролцоод олон чухал зүйлийг ярьлаа. Манай одоо мэргэжлийн хүмүүс нь хараад бас юм хийх байх гэж найдаж байгаа шүү. Мөн манай энэ холбогдохын байгууллагууд нь холбоод нь яасан ажилдаг юм байна. Баярлалаа та бүхэн.